Welcome, everyone, to The Rabbi and the Shrink. I'm Dr. Margarita Guri, CSP, known as Dr. Red Shoe, and this is my favorite rabbi.
Rabbi Yonason Goldson.
And he is an ethics ninja. We have with us today Kimi Hirotsu Ziemski. Welcome.
Oh, I'm delighted.
As are we. You talk about tough decisions in leadership and leadership-driven project management. Never has there been more of a need for you as the world is pressing play after the COVID. I know it's still going on, but we're beginning to go back to the next phase of whatever we call day-to-day. Tell us about project management and what are the tough decisions facing each manager and each owner and each employee right now as the world is pressing play again?
Well, there are a couple of things that are very specific to project management, and one of them is something called boundary management. And this presents a fascinating opportunity for a discussion of ethics in relationship and expectation management. Now, boundary management is a communications management term. And what it means is there are some things that you share with your team and only your team. And there's some things that you share with the greater stakeholder community. The question becomes, if you are not fully transparent, if you are making choices about what you share and when you share it, is boundary management actually ethical, or is it, by some people's lights, fibbing, lying, committing a falsehood? And that's something that I've noticed, and I'm very proud of them, that a lot more of my students and coaching clients are starting to ask that question. And I'm delighted. And then I thought, I'm also stuck. I know exactly who can help me with formulating a clearer sense of the difference between boundary management and lying. There's a difference between transparency and, well, not a difference, but there is a relationship between transparency and timing. And I'm starting to wonder where that lies ethically.
Rabbi, that sounds like a great sticky situation for you.
That's I'm really tickled with this whole line of discussion. And just to make a brief foray, the whole concept of boundaries is one of my favorite discussions. I have a whole chapter in my book, Proverbial Beauty, about
Mine
boundaries.
too.
And King Solomon says, "Do not remove the boundaries of eternity that were put in place by your ancestors." And we're in a time when every convention is being challenged. And while it's certainly healthy to question and to reevaluate, but too many are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And just a fascinating footnote to history, Albert Einstein, years after publishing his theory of relativity, came to regret that he had introduced this concept to the world. And he wrote a friend, he said that essentially that once people are seeing that physical boundaries are malleable, it's a short step from relativity to relativism. And he actually foresaw that ethical and moral boundaries were going to be increasingly challenged, which I just find this really fascinating. And so to your point, in Jewish law, we have a very strict and urgent principle against gossiping. And
Really?
Gossip is by definition true. If it's not true, it's not gossip, it's slander.
Oh.
Which is also wrong. But we do make that distinction. And so when you talk about omitting information, there are times when it is inappropriate to tell the truth. And much to your point about timing,
Mhm.
the sages say, don't rebuke somebody when in the time of his anger.
Mhm.
Don't try to comfort a mourner in the time of their pain. Because you have to choose the right moment. You have to find the right words. You have to know what to say, what not to say. And like I always say, there's no app for being ethical. You can't just open the rule book and say, well, here's number 43 of the ethical behavior guide. There are ethical principles, but situations change and every situation is unique and you have to balance priorities. So it's good to ask the questions you're asking. That's what keeps us on track. It's good to question ourselves, but in principle, knowing that there are times to fully disclose and there are other times when it's just not appropriate.
Or could actually cause harm to somebody else's
Yes,
peace of mind.
Yes.
yes.
And
Or
all of these
even
are
to the
factors.
bottom line of a business. There are times that leaders must bear the burden of keeping certain things to themselves. The trick is, it's just like taste and style. It's hard to teach ethics in those kinds of complicated situations. I mean, you can read Grappling with the Gray, and I put the Good Rabbi's book link in the chat. And luckily, we have a podcast, so you can always come and ask. So help us out then, Kimi. You created something really cool from all your experience, the 7 key parameters
Yes.
that will help guide leaders as they lead. Please enlighten us. I can't wait to hear them.
Well, the 7 key success parameters are actually a framework that is sort of like the most beautiful mandala of things that are interwoven. But for explanation purposes, we generally take them apart, but they always start out with clear definition. And clear definition is not just the dictionary. It's not
It's not just
just
what?
the dictionary. It's
A
not
dictionary.
just what a word means according to some glossary, but it's also that everybody has a commonly held context. The joke I used to say a long, long time ago was, do you know what ATM stands for? And everybody says automatic teller machine. And leaving aside the fact that we get redundant, I'm going to the ATM machine. For someone in telecom, ATM does not stand for something that spits out $20 bills. In telecom, it's asynchronous transmission method. So you must have the context that is shared and clearly understood. So clear
That is hard to
definition
do.
is big. Oh, it's amazing how quickly we fall into the trap of thinking, oh, well, they know what I mean. I don't have to explain it. I got an email recently for the very first in-person event that I'm planning to go to.
Yay.
And the note in it said, we will be at the little church with the blue door. And I thought, there's no address here. Am I the only one who's completely clueless about what church in what town and how blue is the door? Because to me, if it's named the little church with the blue door, it's a blue. But for their purposes, it might be a sky blue that looks to me an awful lot like white. I mean, so common context is a big, big deal. But that also leads to understanding things like interdependency, which is the overarching theme of the key success parameters. And it's also the reason why I did a quick post about what do you do when the ethics in the situation are not cut and dry, they're not simple, because, well,
Yeah.
past a certain age, they never are they?
Well,
Nope.
that's just it.
And if they're cut and dry, you haven't asked enough questions.
And there goes that context again. You clearly think you have all of the information. It's why my students get a gentle reminder that the term no-brainer only counts for one brain. The other person, not so much. So, and we talk about ownership, and that is where leadership often runs into kind of an interesting issue. We do use a responsibility, accountability, and authority model. However, it's a little different. We say that you are truly responsible when you've made an internal commitment to do everything you can to do it right, to do it well, and to be honorable. Accountability is being willing to share the news, whatever the news is, when you need to. Is there a problem and you get the funny feeling you can't solve it by yourself? Great. Bring it to your leadership, because as I like to say, and my business partner likes to say, look, we can't solve a problem if we don't know that it exists, but you do. We can't help. And last but not least is where leadership comes in. When those two internal commitments are made, we should give them more formal authority. And in project management, that becomes tough because we don't have a lot of formal authority. Would you agree? I mean, so that becomes an issue. Along with that is understanding collaborative spirit, rigorous quality, and risk management. And we often tell people, if you have a collaborative spirit, you can do anything. You can solve any problem, because the problem, as big as it is not bigger than all of us. And to a lot of folks, this sounds, well, awfully simplistic, but it goes to the heart of why we have projects to begin with. And that is to create customer-focused deliverables. I'm out of IT. And it's very easy to get all jazzed because there's this new exciting thing. But if it doesn't help my customer achieve their objective, I don't care how cool it is. Keep it out of there.
Well,
put it in the change request.
Whatever you're doing, it's working, because I did some research on you, and you've delivered 162% increase over 3 years for your clients. And with a protection rate of 86 to 92% for client retention. All right, what's the secret? Everyone's paying attention. How do we copy your results other than by hiring you? How do we copy those results? What do we do?
Patience, something this society does not reward.
Next.
Drop the mic right there.
Really. Be aware that you're the guardian of your client's objectives. When they bring you in, whether they bring you in from another department or from outside, like me, like Michael, taking that responsibility, that makes you the guardian and the responsible party for helping them manifest that objective. It's not your objective. You don't get to decide, but sometimes you have to poke them a little bit. Gentle reminders are frequently called for, because
give me an example of a gentle reminder.
Oh, easy. A most recent client has said, I don't care how long it takes, do not go over the budget. And I said, do you have a range that not go over the budget means? He said, yes, 0 to 0. 3 days later, he came to me and said, there's something that I want you to do to make this a little bit easier. And he outlined what he was asking for. And I said, I'm happy to do that, Brad. However, just as a reminder, our budget is already stretched very thinly. If I try to put that work in, it will snap. So does that mean that you and I need to have a chat about changing the priorities and having some additional budget added in conjunction with approving this change? Or was it just a really cool idea, because it is, and you just wanted to share it, but now that you think about it, maybe not so much? gentle reminders do not have to be, hey, dude, you said the budget was stuck. The budget is stuck. That means this change request, nice try. Leave them the courtesy, the respect, fulfill your role as the responsible party for their achieving their objective. And by God, do not assume they're always going to remember what they told you until you remind them.
You know, we've talked before about the insidious term people use, soft skills.
Oh, I hate that.
And somebody actually told me they started calling them power skills, which I like a lot better.
That was me.
Was that you? I was thinking, as I was asking the question, I thought maybe was that Kimi you talking? Kimi talking?
That's you, Kimi. I'm gonna take
Yeah.
that and give you credit.
Well, I think that it was at a meeting where we were, two people in 25. So I'm not at all surprised, but it was also something that I thought, Doctor, you would enjoy, because so much of what you bring to the table, I study and try very hard to learn from your examples. As project leaders, we have to be just edging sometimes into counseling and helping people.
Yes.
And just because we can identify the problem that we think is going on doesn't mean we shouldn't do a little bit of investigation and confirmation to make sure that we're not completely Looney Tunes and it's somewhere else.
Here is one of the ethical dilemmas that any consultant or any outside person has to face. And the rabbi and I've seen many examples of this. If I nudge, if I stick my neck out, will I get fired? So what I've seen is a lot of people being afraid to be accountable leaders, honorable, sticking to what is right because they're afraid they get fired. And it doesn't mean they have to be unkind in how they do things, but I think if we are the guardians, a guardian is at risk, and we should be. There is no job security for guardians.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be on the lookout from enemies from within and without. Enemies of truth, justice, and the American way, whatever. So Rabbi, talk to us about this idea of how do we help people understand the courage that it takes to do what Kimi does?
That's a really interesting question.
Well, thank you.
How do you teach courage? I think the starting point is recognizing that courage is not the absence of fear.
Not by a long shot.
Courage, if you're not afraid, there's nothing to be courageous about. So these daredevils are like jumping off buildings. It's not that they're courageous; they're reckless. If and in fact, in my keynotes, I talk about the 3 enemies of ethics, and the second one is fear. And the solution I offer is to fight fear with fear. Because if we would spend as much time thinking about what could go wrong if we don't act as we do what will go wrong if I do act, then at least we can achieve a certain level of equilibrium. And that, there's so many examples of people who simply were afraid to act. We're afraid. I like the story of when United Airlines, when they dragged that doctor off the plane a couple of years ago.
Yes,
because they needed the seat, and then they offered them. Nobody wanted to pay, take the money to give up their seat, and so they chose somebody at random. Some of the security guards dragged him off the plane, and the video went viral. They got a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. The stock value plummeted $1 billion. And why did this happen? Because the gate agent was only authorized to offer up to $800 for passengers to give up their seats. And when nobody would take the deal, She was afraid to exceed her authority.
Yes.
In hindsight, isn't it obvious that she should have offered a few $100s more?
Yes.
But it's not her fault. It's the supervisors who need to give her the sense, we trust you to use your judgment. We'll back you up if you have to make an executive decision. We want you to recognize there are going to be times when you are going to have to make a decision that may feel like it's coloring outside the lines a little bit,
Yeah.
but the situation demands it. If leaders will communicate that, and you talked about, what was it, the seventh rule of giving people the authority, giving people the power when it's appropriate. We know micromanagement doesn't work.
Oh God, no.
But
You know,
ultimately, it doesn't work because it means I don't trust you.
It works
And
for
so I'm
me
not going
because
to
that's why I get lots of clients.
Yeah.
Very profitable. I love micromanagement.
But
Ah.
your help actually takes them out of being micromanagers.
Yeah.
There is something else in authority, though, that has to do with not just power, but permission and protection, because everybody makes mistakes.
And that's what the rabbi was saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That trust factor.
Yeah,
We trust you to
exactly.
do your, but you said it before, the commitment to do your best.
Yes.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm going to mess up. We're human.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are no good choices. Yeah.
You know, I had a wonderful example of a leader who, if Diana called today, I would be on the next flight to LA. I'd walk through fire for that woman. And we got an opportunity to do some business with a marquee client. That's the kind of client where you always put their logo on your website with great excitement and fanfare. And we'd been trying to get this client for years, decades. We got the request for proposal. I went through it. I took it to my engineers. My engineers got incredible heartburn. And I went to my boss and I said, Diana, how much trouble am I going to be in if I go to this client and respectfully decline to bid on the business? And her eyes got really big. But instead of saying, have you lost your mind? She said, okay, getting the heart rate back. Tell me why. And I said, the best engineers we've had have looked at this configuration, and it's not bleeding edge, it's hemorrhaging edge. And they don't believe that they can make it work to a level of reliability and quality that they're willing to put their names and our company name on. We don't know when it'll break down, but we guarantee you the way they're currently demanding it be built, it will break down. And we're just not willing to go forward under those circumstances. Now, they know, and I know, that we don't get the last word on this. But I'm hoping you understand why we would prefer not to bid on it. She thought about it. I know she made a few discreet phone calls, as well she should have, to double check, were my engineers, on the level? And then she went and said, go ahead and do it. I called the client and asked for a meeting. They were appalled because it was out of the scope of the request for proposal. And I said, well, actually, I would like to explain why we're not going to bid. And I thought, are you still there? Are you still there? I went in and the vice president of finance looked at me and said, let me get this straight. You guys have been chasing us for 2 decades that I know of, and you're not bidding. And I said, no, sir, we're not, because we don't believe we can create that in a way that we'd be proud to offer to you, in a way that we believe would work for you. And he looked at me, he said, I'll be damned. going to get in trouble for this when you get back into your office? I said, I don't know yet, but my boss has my back. Well, two things happened as a result of that. One, she went to bat for me, and I got the best performance bonus I ever had the year I told a client that we respectfully declined. But I'm Buddhist. We got a thing about karma. 3 years later, I got a phone call from the same fellow. He was now with a new firm. I went into his office, met him, and he handed me a contract. It was a no-bid contract for millions.
Congrats.
And I said, I'm a little puzzled. And he looked at me and said, Ziemski, if something comes up, I know I'm going to hear it from you. I know it will be because you're looking after my best interests. I need somebody like that to handle this project. You guys take a look at it,
Congrats.
let me know. So I'm not saying do that because you want karma to, come and grab you and go, awesome. Do that because it's the right thing to do. And somewhere along the line, you might actually be able to help somebody else see why it was the right thing to do. And that's not a bad thing.
No, and I like the way you did it without blame, without any bad energy. You just explained it. I like the respectful way that you went through the process. I think it's great. I think you grappled with the rabbi's gray beautifully.
Well, and it leads to one of my favorite mantras, which is that good ethics is good business. And
absolutely.
Saying you don't know, saying you're wrong, saying I can't do it is not weakness. It's integrity.
It's weak knees. Okay. I had to sit down in his office. I've never had to do that before because I was pretty sure that if I didn't sit down, he would see my pants going like this because my knees were knocking so hard. I was never
Well,
so
if
scared.
it was easy, courage wouldn't be such a big ideal.
Yeah.
Courage takes a lot of strength. And sometimes our knees are the first to understand that the strength is being called to action, right?
Yeah.
I suppose if you want to get sort of physiological and philosophical, you'd say, why do the knees shake? Because they don't want to go forward.
They don't want to be hitting the ground in preparation for an axe coming about here through there. Which actually also gets to a question that I would like to ask the two of you. How would you suggest that I help the people that I coach, people who are at different stages of their careers, but are now facing something like this? Because it is not my favorite to tell stories about my experiences because it sounds, to my way of thinking, it doesn't sound honorable. It sounds like I'm bragging. But it also is because that takes the focus off of them. And ethically as a coach, that's not what I'm there to do. So help, please.
Well, the rabbi and I handle that in different ways. Rabbi handles it with stories from people so long ago that it doesn't pose a problem. And I handle that by suggesting you tell happy client stories. I had a client who was in this situation and did that. I was very proud of them, took a lot of courage. You're facing something similar. I think instead of focusing on us, we can always focus on others' success, whether they're old dead white guys, from the Bible or
with or without yarmulkes.
Yeah, whichever, right? Rabbi,
They're Middle
what
Eastern.
are
They
your
may not have been
comments
that
on
white, so I'm not sure.
Huh?
That's true.
Who are you calling white? No, you're pink. Okay, pink.
No, I said they were Middle Eastern, so they may not have been so white.
Well, they may not have. That's right. That's right. They may not. Thank God. All right, we've got some diversity in the Bible. This is good.
Well, that's just it. And of course, diversity is all about different perspectives, different angles. Not about checking boxes, or shouldn't be. And
Yeah.
the willingness to look at things from different angles. I mean, in Jewish history, we have many examples of people who could have changed the world in a phenomenal way and
Mhm.
didn't, either because they didn't act when they should have, or they acted when they shouldn't have.
Which
So
also leads
what am
back
I
to the
supposed
boundary
to do?
management. Thank you. My goodness.
What I'm not supposed to do is say that there's a simple solution for every problem, because there aren't. And this is what we talked about before. It's the willingness to look at every possible angle, explore every possible option, and then try to make the best decision that I can make under the circumstances. Understanding that, you know, CYA is not a strategy for success. If I'm so worried about what's going to come around and bite me from behind, then I'm going to be second guessing myself all the way through. And so you get this bizarre balance between, like I said, go wrong with confidence.
Well,
No decision is also a decision. And so make up your mind
that's
what's the
true.
best shot you have, and then go into it full force. Now, that doesn't mean you can't reevaluate along the way. If you see it's not working, you may have to change course, may have to back off. But that's not the same as being indecisive or irresolute.
No. And I think that Kimi, sorry, is very smart to point out that none of us have to do this alone. If I'm grappling with something and I want input, I have some advisors. I can call the Rabbi. I can call my friend Brita Miller. I can call Marilyn Suttle. There are people I can call and say, what do you think? My twin sister is never short an opinion. Her husband, I could ask. So I have advisors, my friends, the Wetters. So one of the things, I mean, you asked a very important question, about what to do. Who are your team of advisors is the question I asked everyone who's listening. Who are your ethics advisors? Because no project management can be successful as an endeavor unless we know the objectives and who's there to help with those, because it's easy to lose perspective. So I'm going to ask you one final question before the word of the day. There are people listening. They want to do better. What are the top mistakes that people make? And I know some of your titles for your talks, let me read one of them. I think it's so funny. The tyranny of the urgent, the cost of bad decisions. I love that. Talk about that or other things. What are the top mistakes we make in project management in terms of our leadership?
Not establishing upfront the kind of leader that we are striving to be, which includes being willing, able, although not thrilled, to deliver the news that people need to hear. They don't want to hear it, but they need to hear it. And being upfront about that, consultants are not the only project managers who can say in the discovery process, before we go forward, I'd like you to know a little something about how I work and where my boundaries are, the things that I will stand for and the things that, I'm sorry, would simply be unacceptable according to my framework of
Would you mind
of
demonstrating for us
ethics.
how to do that? Because I have a feeling everyone's on the edge of their seats right now, trying to figure out, how do I do that? What do I say?
Well, if I were in front of a client right now, I would look at them and I would say, all right, we've agreed upon the technicalities, but as you know, I believe that the team is the biggest tool you have for success. And in that light, I'd like to establish a picture for you of the way that I work with the team, including the sponsors, the clients, and all of the users. This is important because if this isn't consistent with the principles by which you do business, I could do a bang up job, but you would still be unhappy, and rightfully so. But also, if you asked me to do something that was outside of my personal framework of ethics and honor, and I told you so and left, you'd have wasted all that time and
Say
all
that
that
last part
money.
again. I didn't hear it.
Oh, if you asked me to do something that was outside of my framework of ethics or honor, I would have to leave. And there goes all that time and all your money, and any progress that's made gets stalled while you look for my replacement. Neither one of us wants that to happen. So I'd like to have this conversation right now.
It's amazing how much being upfront and communicating clearly just diffuses so many potential problems.
Of
And
course,
yet
I
we don't want
learned
to have
that
those
by now.
conversations. Why are we so reluctant to have those conversations? We're afraid, I guess. We're afraid of being uncomfortable, making other people uncomfortable.
I could blow the contract. I can't even get fired from it if I blow it, if I don't even get it.
I think some people just don't know how to have the conversation and don't understand the power they have to influence the work and the outcomes and the parameters as a consultant or speaker or coach or trainer. We have a lot of power as inside or outside professionals, you know.
We're the ones that provide, as they like to say, new eyes.
Without ego. And I think that
As possible.
so ignorance, ego, and fear, I think, are the things I see people having trouble with.
And
Of course, it's that
also,
objectivity of just somebody
yes.
who's not emotionally involved in the choices or the outcome.
Well, there is also one other thing. The answers that work for me, the phrases that I use that work for me, I had to stop somebody from taking it down as if they were taking dictation. And I said, Joseph, that coming out of you, it wouldn't sound like you. It wouldn't be genuine. And everybody likes to say, well, you must be your authentic self. I like to say genuine self. It wouldn't be genuinely who you are, where you're coming from. So by all means, take notes. That's why I answer your questions. But don't ever think that you have to spit out what Kimi said in class.
I think that's very thoughtfully said. My friend Sue, who is a brilliant consultant, and she's invented something that project managers need to know about. I'm going to make it so that she can speak. But she had something to say, and then I'll ask her to tell about her invention. I think some people might be concerned about being perceived as negatively minded and or too structured, narrow-minded going into an engagement. Mm-hmm. And that is that fear of how we're presenting ourselves. And yet nothing that Kimi said made her look anything but supremely competent to be of service. She's got it down the way it does sound authentic. And I think it's okay for people to go through and take notes about how Kimi says it, as long as then they make it their own somehow, you know.
Exactly.
I think it's not a bad template from which to start. So Sue, talk to us about the your invention very briefly, and then let's talk about the ethics of, like introducing new ideas and things that are still in a beta phase of testing and stuff like that. All right, Sue, take it away. Your invention, ma'am.
Okay. Rabbi, you mentioned something earlier about sort of micromanaging never works kind of thing. And I agree with that if it's being applied at a higher level. But I think that so many businesses, and this is kind of the core of the invention that I'm working on, is so many businesses rely on so many sort of tedious and detailed and methodical tasks and activities that that need to happen sort of at the right time in the right place and happen correctly in order for their larger vision to be delivered, whether it's a product or a service. Every company has a giant stack of procedure manuals that they rely on, that they've spent millions developing as a way to achieve that vision. In other words, if we carefully execute all of these things in these 16 feet thick manuals, then our chicken service or our cruise line or hospital will deliver as we've envisioned. And where I think that there's quite a gap in what I'm trying to achieve with this invention is basically helping sort of the middle manager, leader, supervisor level people that are sort of expected to have all of the skill sets in order to translate that giant stack of manuals into action by the individual workers that have to accomplish all of those tasks. You mentioned the thing about the airport and the whole thing, and I'm thinking that certainly isn't something that would be on the list of the tasks to be done as to how to handle that differently, but rather everything that supports that, the vacuuming, the trash taking out, the restroom cleaning, the food service, all of those things to really hum and work at a high level requires all this detailed work. So I'm developing a platform that allows basically training, tying the trio together, which I think is key to driving performance. The training, which I value to some extent. I don't think that training is the answer to every non-performance issue, but training and then a work task assignment kind of thing. And then the system selecting things for follow-up inspection by the supervisors. And it works kind of as a 3-module trio to drive that performance and help kind of, as I said earlier, translate that load of how do we keep our facility clean? How often does that have to happen? Who's supposed to do it? Who did I ask to do that? All those things are taken out of the loop. So I'm working on the final pieces of that now. And that's kind of, it's a driving performance through kind of a methodology that I've developed.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
It does, doesn't it?
Can I have one, please?
Absolutely.
I want one
taking
too for all my
now
compliance issues.
It's a fascinating thing. I've done quite a bit of project management and also work with Porsche Consulting in the lean group that they have. I spent several months with them. So I'm very familiar with that whole methodology and school of thought. And I completely agree with your earlier statement, Kimi, about it's that whole mentality is really not part of project management. Project management is the execution, in my mind, of the results of the study that is the other part. You have to figure out what's the best way to do it. Once that's happening, then make that happen through project management and actually through my Oculus software as well. Once you've decided what you really want to do, let's help you get that done the most efficient way possible and the most consistent way possible.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, there are so many pieces of work that help an organization go on a day-to-day, just getting to the end of the week, that need to absolutely happen, but should not require the kind of oversight that frequently we have a person doing.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you pointed out there are exceptions, that gate agent was dealing with an exception. And there are always going to be things happening. That's why risk management is such a big deal for all of us, frankly. But that you can actually deal with those so much easier if you're not being monopolized by the minutia. Ooh, I like that phrase, monopolized by the minutia.
That's a meme.
Okay, that is a good meme. It's also a good keynote.
Oh, yes, you should do that.
Being
That's a good
monopolized by the
keynote.
minutia. Excellent.
It's very nice. I like it.
You know, we've talked before about decision fatigue.
Mhm.
That if we have to make too many decisions by the end of the day, we are depleted. And then something big comes along and really competent people can do really stupid things because they've just worn out the elasticity of their brains.
Yeah.
And so the more that we can relegate to a kind of automatic system, whether it's technological or just behavioral, the more we are protecting ourselves against what can go wrong when we have to face those big decisions.
And I value, Kimi, so much what you do because I believe that when people are calm and have a system like what you offer, a system for thinking and behaving, for asking questions, for staying on top of things, I think people calm down enough, then their brains can think about ethics, because somehow in a crisis, ethics go out the window. Not for everyone, but pretty frequently. So I love the idea that you provide this system for calm. So here's what I'm going to do. I want the rabbi to do the word of the day. And then when we come back, I want you to think about what is one last thing you want to leave people with. Rabbi, sir, the word of the day.
Well, the word of the day, you will immediately see the relevance to our conversation. And the word is amphictyony.
Huh?
Do I need to define that?
I put it in the chat, but you need to say it again and then define it again.
Amphictyony. It was the coalition of Greek city-states that were that had a focal point of the Oracle of Delphi.
Ah.
Now, why is that relevant? Because it's actually expanded to a broader system where you have groups of people, maybe tribes or individuals, who are united not by ethnicity, not by geography, but by a common set of higher values. And I think that just fits perfectly with your vision, Kimi, of the project manager as somebody who creates that vision, that sense of purpose, that sense of meaning, that collaborative spirit that brings us together because we have a common goal and we feel committed to each other because we're committed to the same ideals.
Yes, but also too, as, oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. I just forgot the other lady's name.
Sue.
Sue, how could I forget that? As Sue had mentioned, and eliminating all of those other tasks and tying in with decision fatigue, and if I may say so, I hate to admit it, video conferencing fatigue. The reason I call it the tyranny of the urgent is because if somebody is pounding on your head and they won't stop until you deliver what they want, then you're not paying attention to your inner compass. You are paying attention to get them to stop pounding on your head with the 2x4 they've got in their hands. And being able to refer to those as a commonly held set of principles, and that's what leadership-driven project management is all about. It's not lean, and Sue, I had done some work with extreme lean product development. That is an amazingly pressure-intensive environment. You can get great work done, but there's a lot of pressure in it. And the thing that never changes, whether you're using lean or Six Sigma or agile or predictive, is this. As a project leader who happens to also be a project manager, you're not going to get anything done by yourself. You need your team. So you have a responsibility to create a culture for them that makes it easier for them to deliver, and to deliver beautifully, and to not lose their minds while they're doing it.
And, in principle, it's simple, it's obvious.
Well,
and in practice, it's a lot more complicated.
Simple doesn't mean easy.
My father always said that, simple, not easy.
Yeah, somebody said there's a difference you see with push-ups, right? Push-ups are incredibly simple, but they're not easy.
No,
they are not. I like your papa.
Yeah, he was a smart guy.
So, Doctor, do you have a last word for us before we adjourn?
Yes, so one last word, and I'm going to say something I had neglected to say. Sue's company is called the Oculus 1000, and eventually they'll get up to 5,000. They have different levels that they're putting out. Anyone who's interested. And Kimi, I'm going to connect the two of you because she is a brilliant mind. You're a brilliant mind. You both know how to help people be on top of stuff. So the bottom line is, for the final word of the day is we've been incredibly delighted to have Kimi Hirotsu Ziemski here. The whole idea of tough decisions as a leader is what the rabbi and I grapple with all the time. And we've defined that anybody who's participating in anything is a leader, whether you're the official leader, unofficial leader, or the new schlub on the job, you're still a leader. And everyone has to have accountability. My biggest takeaway from this isn't any of the things you said, Kimi, it's more how you said it. I love your sense of ethical communication and ethical limit setting. That's something many people don't talk about, and they certainly don't understand. And that you would then, after a contract is agreed upon, before the final word, then talk about how you work and what you won't do and will do. That is so incredibly important, because as the rabbi had said, it stops all sorts of problems later on, right? It's like before you get married, it'd be nice to know certain things, right? And I think a contract isn't quite a marriage, but it is an important agreement. So I urge everyone to look at, I put all the links to find Kimi. Let me put them again. She has a Facebook group that's interesting for project management. It looks like she just started it. She has a website, her email, and her LinkedIn profiles. I put them there. Please do join with her. And as you have questions, let us know. Kimi and Rabbi and Malcolm and Sue, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
It's always an honor and never anything but amazing for me to be participating in this. It is, I think, such a fun thing to do and so important. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
and you, Kimi.
you.